in the cabinet to have figured out the impact that you have. Please don't think that impact is related to age. If you think in a country of 1.4 billion people, you have to wait for your turn to come aage, no. Did anybody question how these ministers go to all the conclaves of news organizations? Are those news organizations not getting ads? Did anybody question that why are they getting so many ministers? Nobody questions them just because they're journalists who are doing the questioning. But if they come on podcast, then how do you dare you wouldn't go? Why? Those guys are getting millions, the podcasters are getting millions of viewers. The channels are not getting so many millions. In journalism, pompous they get simply because, like I told you earlier, no, they hang around powerful people and they think that hum bhi kuch बहुत बड़ी चीज है. I told Prime Minister this. Prime Ministers don't take decisions because a journo told him that. Don't be silly. If anybody comes and tells me, oh, अगली बारी election कौन जीतेगा? I was like, what should I tell you? I don't know myself, man. I know it just as much as you do.
If you ask a teenager or a college student about the most relevant, most famous journalists today, most of them will name this lady because she's entered the field of podcasting, the Maidan. I personally believe that journalism all over the world is molding itself into a newer, more relevant, more 2023 version of itself. And when it comes to India, Smita Prakash is at the forefront of this change. The ANI podcast with Smita Prakash is probably the most relevant piece of journalism that's come into the mainstream lately. If you ask a teenager, if you ask a college student about the most relevant journalist today, most of them would name her because of her podcast. Because for most of the young population of India, the way they consume their news is only through the internet, only through digital, and nowadays, mostly through podcasts. She's got one of the deepest knowledge sets that I've come across, and that's because of almost 30 years of journalism behind her. That's how long she's been in the game. She's a joy to speak with. I asked her some basic questions, some so-called advanced questions. You're going to enjoy this conversation if you enjoy deep diving style conversations on the Ranveer Show, the kind of conversations that we've been having lately. So enjoy this deep dive into the realities of politics in our country today, the realities of India in general today. I hope you watch the entire episode till the end. This is Smita Prakash on TRS. Welcome to the ANI News Podcast with Smita Prakash.
Seriously? No, the Ranveer Show.
How's it going?
I think I'm a little nervous being the person who's being questioned rather than doing the questioning. So much easier to do that now that I'm on the hot seat. But I'm so happy to be on your show.
We're happy to be hosting you, ma'am. Like, honestly, a lot of us in this room, in my office, even in Monk Entertainment, I believe you met Viraj, we have tremendous respect for you for entering this whole digital arena like the way you have. So that's what I've been holding back from you. I've not been having a real conversation with you until this point.
Thank you so much for saying that because, when I meet young people like you, and firstly, the most important thing I want to say is that if you dare say aapki generation or something like that, I will cut you off right there. But it was a plunge to do it because all of you are so young. And when it was suggested to me that I should get into this space, I was like really nervous because there was nobody from my generation that I knew of. There were some people who were doing podcasts, but not 2 episodes a week and things. And I was like, how will I be able to do this? And people will get bored because youngsters are into this. And I don't know whether I can do it, but it's been a fun ride.
Are we going to see a lot of independent journalists
getting into podcasting?
Maybe.
Yes. I think there is pressure on the channels also saying that, hey, why don't we get into this space too? So initially, even I had this thing that वो तो podcast करता है, वो क्यों press conference में आया है, right? There was this sense of you haven't gone through the rigors of journalism,
which is true.
Yeah. So there was this snooty attitude which journalists had for podcast journalists that you don't come with that rigor of training that we have gone through. You are not, you don't have to, rules don't apply to you all that much as they do to us, because we have a sub-editor, we have an editor, we have to answer to so many people when we do our story. Because, for example, I might have attended somebody's press conference and the guy was faffing. He was BSing, right? So I cannot write that Mr. X talked nonsense. No, I can't. I have to do the reporting. I have to say, he said this, he was asked this, he said this is the outlay, this is the... All that has to be done, right? Then I give it to the editor who goes through it and he says, but what is the meat of this? Like, why should a reader read this? So then usme thoda sa opinion dalega, wo dalega. So there are so many firewalls. Whereas a podcaster who's sitting at the back, listens to it, goes on air and says whatever he has to, na, he has put a color to the whole thing. He has, says Bharat Jodo Yatra. Right? There were podcasters who were covering the Bharat Jodo Yatra. Now, it was their first interaction with the Rahul Gandhi. They've never met a politician of that stature. So they were like all gushing and guying and gooing in the when they were covering it. Whereas a journalist who was covering the Bharat Jodo Yatra has a totally different angle, right? He's putting it in perspective of where Rahul Gandhi came from. What is this? There is a political method to it, or there is what? Whereas you didn't see that with so a podcaster who was doing a food blogging or a food podcaster was seeing it from that angle, that here's a young guy going out, eating, working out, and there's somebody else who's got another angle. Wo apne audience ke hisab se he's doing that. So there is a difference somewhere that it might merge.
Okay. So I think you guys are taught the ethical and the systematic way to dissect a situation and then take it to the public.
Yeah.
That's what the actual core skill of journalism is.
Yes.
And, you know, I don't know a more polite way of saying this, but journalists are taught to do the dirty work when it comes to an information download for the general masses.
Okay.
Like, I think you actually have to go on the field. You have to do like all that studying, all that research. I still see the world of content creation and journalism fully merging, and I'll tell you why. Because even when I was growing up, journalism was downloaded to us through newspapers and TV channels. I think both those formats all over the world, they're kind of dying. So the only thing that's left is digital.
Yeah.
So I think everyone's going to be on YouTube at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know what's happening in the world of content creation? No YouTubers are really surviving unless they're doing podcasts. So at least from my eyes, like even on my own YouTube feed, I just watch sports and podcasts. That's it. That's what my YouTube feed is. What's your YouTube feed like? News?
Yeah.
And?
So it would be news. It would be a little bit of, suppose I'm going to be interviewing somebody from Bollywood, so it would have a little bit of Bollywood in that. Like I would go in searching. But for a long time, I would just watch, I would go into YouTube only at night when I wanted to chill. So instead of Netflixing, I would go into YouTube at times, and almost every night I would watch a Bill Maher. I'd watch, Stephen Colbert. I would watch any of the night shows, John Oliver, and just watch it. And it gives you, it relaxes you, but at the same time, it's intelligent conversation. Their stand-ups. It was nice. Jimmy Fallon, I would watch that. So these are the things that I would watch. I'd watch you and a couple of other podcasts that I would do. If I was interviewing somebody, then I would watch the podcast. But that I've also found a little negative in the sense that I did a podcast with Devendra Fadnavis. And so I was looking in and seeing किन ने किया हुआ है. So nobody had done a podcast in English or Hindi. He'd gone to a conclave, and then I saw Arnab had interviewed him, and then I just felt so let down because I felt मैं नहीं कर पाऊंगी ये. Why? I will not be able to ask these kind of questions which Arnab has asked because my style is a little different. So it will fall flat. Similarly, I interviewed Manoj Vajpayee on the podcast. And I just felt that at the end of it, I didn't do justice to it. Whereas some other podcasts of Manoj Vajpayee was so much better than what I had done. So maybe it's better not to see some very successful podcast before doing your own of the same person.
Because it paints a color before you head into the conversation.
Sometimes maybe you feel that I need to ask the same question, I might get a different answer. But if it's a person who's gone on several programs, they do that, they answer in the same manner. It's the same answer to the question.
Okay.
That's what I have felt. Maybe in a few years' time, I might not feel that way.
I think too many people are too PR trained now.
Yeah.
That's the honest truth.
If they've gone to too many shows, yeah.
Yeah, they have a set answer for what they ask because they also know what they're going to be asked. I'm going to ask you a raw question. You can be very brutal with your answer. What do content creators lack that journalists have in terms of there is definitely a gap because of like the kind of education, the kind of experiences you guys had? But what do we do to match up to these levels? And will we even be able to match up to these levels? Because I feel that the nature of a lot of podcasters is just having a relaxed conversation. But the nature of journalism, like the ethical aspect of it, is that you are supposed to dissect in order to help the audiences read between the lines. So a part of your job is to ask like the tough questions. And a big part of my job as a content creator is to just chill with the person I'm speaking with. So it's two very different zones of content creation, but still, I'm still asking you this, like, what can we adopt from the world of journalism?
I think you will get at some point of time bored with just chilling. And the more gyan you accumulate over the years, you will feel like asking counter questions which are sharper and which are more aggressive. Maybe that's your growth. I don't know. And the other way around for journalists who've been doing this sharp, aggressive kind of journalism, maybe at some point of time, they might want to not do it. See, but I have never done that kind of journalism. Like, I cannot question my guests in a certain manner. I keep it civil. I don't know, that's me. And I have never done that. I don't need to be aggressive in asking a question. I can ask it politely. That is what I set those ground rules earlier. I'm criticized for it quite a bit. For example, when I interviewed Mr. Modi, there was a lot of criticism that you were very softball. But if you go back, if anybody is to critically judge it, there were over 40 questions. Right? In 40, can you do 40 softball questions? No. There are some softballs which you throw. That's part of the process. When you play a cricket game, not everyone is out for the middle stump, no? So, what is the idea? As a journalist working for a news agency, my idea is to get content from my guest from the person I'm interviewing for use for every channel. I'm not a person who would interview for TRPs, for ratings, because I'm not a TV channel. So there's a difference when I interview a prime minister or when a channel interviews a prime minister or leader of the opposition, anybody. So I have that style because I'm an agency journalist. I know I get trolled a lot for saying this under the guise of agency, tum kuch bhi, and things like that. Jo bolenge. I don't
I think if people have sharp opinions about a subject, they expect you to share that sharp opinion.
Yeah.
Which is why there's so much pressure on you asking like tough questions, because it's actually in their heart. And then also, possibly in some cases, there's an element of jealousy. That why did this person get it? Why not me? I would have asked like better questions.
True. There are journalists, very senior journalists, who said, if I got that opportunity, I would do this. She's so useless.
But you didn't get the opportunity.
Exactly. I waited my turn. No, for so many occasions, I didn't get the opportunity.
I do feel I'm being very vulnerable here. Not vulnerable, I'm just being open. This is not vulnerability.
It is okay to be vulnerable, no?
Yeah. This is what I was discussing with my guys when we went to the cabinet for the cabinet minister interviews. The average age of that team was 21 years. And I was the oldest guy at 29 because all the other guys are 18, 19. And all of us were collectively feeling damn weird that this is happening to us so early in life. Like I felt it was early for me also.
Yeah.
So I did feel it was a little unfair to possibly maybe journalists who've actually dedicated their entire life to political happenings in the country.
No, man.
You don't think it's
What?
unfair?
Absolutely not. I think it's a late realization in the cabinet to have figured out the impact that you have. So please don't think that impact is related to age. Why would you think that? I mean, at no point of time should you feel any sense of guilt that you jumped the queue. Who? If you think in a country of 1.4 billion people, you have to wait for your turn to come aage? No. That's not what you're supposed to do. You have to jump the queue. You have to go forward. Stand in line when you're at the airport, and that's about it. In your career, no. Absolutely not. I think the world is just waking up to the fact that you guys speak to people who we guys took for granted or journalists took for granted.
Like?
The conversations that you have on your podcast. Our generation of journalists, or why my generation, even the younger journalists, they think those people are not important. They're not. Arey, wo to sirf guru hai. Guru to only spiritual hai. Sirf spiritual. No. The conversations that you've had, it's touched so many people who journalists take for granted. So I'm so glad that people in positions of power are realizing that they cannot talk to just journalists. And journalists who were sitting in this ivory thing and looking down upon podcasters that, okay, you didn't go through the rigors of journalism, so what? To journalists, I would say you cannot always be the person interpreting, doing the interpretation of policies and programs for the people. There will be others who will come in. Yes, to a certain extent, our training, the rigors that we have done gives a wider perspective. But in today's world, in 2023, I think people need to see all. And they are mature enough to understand that this I get from a podcaster. This I need to cross-check with a journalist. This I need to figure out from somebody else. I need to go to my parents. I need to go to my college principal. I need to get perspectives. That is extremely important. Life is not just black and white or one shade.
Now I have to take you to your ground reporting experiences.
Okay.
What's been like the most intense reporting experience of your entire career?
Stories. I can't really pick on stories which I've liked doing or not liked doing. I think I did so much. Like for a long time, I was working while doing ANI, which is the news journalism part. I was also working for many foreign broadcasters. So that was fun because you see India from a foreign news agency's perspective. Stuff that, we used to take for granted, like environment and all that. Till about 5 years ago, where was environment journalism important at all? Pollution or river water pollution, your droughts and floods and all that. Okay, in a newsroom, what happens? हाँ, flood हो गया. Okay, बिहार में flood हो गया. कितने मरे भाई? अच्छा, 15 dead. हाँ, okay, fine. Put it in the 2 p.m. bulletin. That's how it works. Okay, 30 dead. Okay, maybe in the 7 p.m. bulletin or 6 p.m. bulletin.
Wow.
It deadens your humanity to a large extent.
Journalism in India.
In India. So it's like, okay, let me get to the foreign part, totally different when they report. So it's like Assam floods are happening. It happens every year. Forget it. जब ज़्यादा लोग मरेंगे तब देखेंगे आप. कोई comment आया क्या? Has CM commented? Has PM commented? Okay, regret and funds are being generated. Okay, fine, put it in the 2 p.m. bulletin. Oh, nobody's watching. Floods का कितना देखेंगे? Can't tell. So it goes in. So that's the kind of sensitivity, or that's the kind of interest that these kind of stories would have in a newsroom. Or, okay, look at the debates also, no? It's all about Hindu-Muslim all the time. Get one Mullah ji, get one Pandit, and then have them fighting.
Why is it about Hindu-Muslim all the time?
It should not be, but then it's ratings. whenever people ask me this in colleges and schools when I go to speak, and they turn around and they say, why is it so polarized? Why your debate? I said, "Tuम dekhte kyun ho? Why are you watching it?"
It's your ratings. You guys are tuning in.
You sit in your living room, your mommy sits there, daddy sits there, and they're giving galis all the time.
Yeah.
Right? They don't see it, na. If you don't see it, then you don't watch it. They won't get the ratings. Won't happen.
Don't you feel that like the newer generation, and I mean Gen Z, don't you think they are more into raw and in-depth stuff rather than this old school format of putting two people against each other?
That format is going to die out. People are getting sick and tired, Ranveer.
Okay.
You work a whole day, 9 hours, 10 hours. See what happened. Why were people getting into that? The reason is because whole day you've had no time to do news. No time to see ki kya hua, kya nahi hua, and things like that. So you put your trust in those 9 p.m. or 7 p.m. whatever bulletins that you were watching. You put your trust in those anchors that they had sifted through the news of the day and they were going to tell you what is right, what is wrong. That is why some of our anchors have this huge fan following and huge viewership, is because after they have gone through the whole day, they are going to tell you, because you are exhausted. You've come back home after the drudgery of a day's work and commuting, like in your city in Mumbai. I mean, getting home is itself like takes the jaan out of you. So you come home and then you sit in front of the TV and you expect the anchor to tell you, ye sahi hai, ye galat hai, because you don't want to think. You don't want to use your mental faculties. You just want to sit and watch. And a lot of it is entertainment. When they are quarreling, arre usko down kiya, arre usko ye, it's fun. So for many people, they were watching it. But after some time, that noise is getting to everybody now. The comments that you're seeing, like I appear on these debates, a lot of it is, let that person talk. Allow that person to say what he has to. Why are you... But in these channels, what happens is that the guy who's on the control, he's the one who doesn't do the fader for the person who's the rudest, meanest, loudest. They are the ones who are listened to because you're listening to them.
Because drama used to sell. I don't think drama sells anymore. Post-COVID, everyone wants a more relaxed, more broken down format of things. I also feel that's the big, I don't want to call it curse, but it's the big downside of television-based journalism, that there are time limits that you're supposed to follow because of the way the money works in that industry.
Yeah, true. That's true. But then who are these people who are coming as experts? Tell me.
I don't know. You tell me.
Who are these? They're just sitting in a car and they're talking and giving you gyan on politics. What have they done? Do they represent a political party? Have they done any kind of reporting on politics? What do they know? They come in as experts who have done an analysis on politics. They come in, and the other opinion is that why should we only have journalists as experts? We should have a doctor talking about politics. Okay, fine. If that works for you guys, it's okay. I'm not the one who's deciding. So I just feel that it's wrong. Would you call a gynecologist to sit out here and tell me whether Pepsi is the right thing to drink or not, or Coke is the right thing to drink or not, or whatever? Why? They're not an expert on that, right? So why would you sit 1 hour and talk about mental health from just a sports person? It'll be a section of it, but she doesn't become an expert on that.
Is money reducing in the world of television-based journalism?
Absolutely. Because
I hear some of my friends saying that they've lost sponsors.
It's going to come to YouTube. Wait and watch. It's coming to digital.
You mean the brands that work with television news channels are going to move to ANI News podcast?
It's coming. It's moving to digital. It's already moved a lot to digital.
Okay.
So anybody who has a TV channel is concentrating a lot on their digital content. Anybody who has a newspaper, just to go back a little bit in time, when we used to do reporting, and we'd go and do, like maybe Vajpayee ji, okay, he's going to the US, UN ja rahe hain. So we would go PM is speaking in the UN, Indian PM is speaking in the UN, Indian delegation is meeting with this and other. We do like blow by blow reporting. As a news agency, we have to do blow by blow reporting. Who are the people who met? Who the Prime Minister? Where did the Prime Minister go? What did the Indian delegation do? From the Secretary to the Additional Secretary to the Joint Secretary. What were the deals that were signed, not signed? Whatever happened. Then there'll be the like the India Today and Outlook and all these journalists. They would file one story in a week. That's all they needed to do. One analysis piece, a roundup. Whole week they were just absorbing, and they were, writing a book of their own or doing whatever.
What would the salaries be like?
Phenomenally high, because they were like so Yanni. So they did. What happened? Within a couple of years, by the time the next Prime Minister came in, they had to do reporting, because all those magazines, all those newspapers also had a website. So they had to compete with us. We already had muscle memory, right, of filing beat by beat stories. They had no muscle memory of doing that. Those who learned and did it survived. Those who were resisting it moved off. They had to move away into whatever they were doing after that. Similarly, editing, camera work, right? If somebody turned around and said that I'm a reporter, मैं camera नहीं करूँगा, मैं photo नहीं करूँगा, मैं पौड़ी नहीं उठाऊँगा, the ladder, the stand of the camera, मैं वो नहीं उठाऊँगा, वो soundman उठाएगा. No. Your cameraman now is also a reporter, is also picking up stuff. I've done that. You pick up the stuff, you learn how to use, you learn tech, you learn editing, you learn everything, because unless you are multitasking as a journalist, you are a dying breed. And podcasting and getting onto YouTube is one of the things that journalists will have to learn.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, but I will begin with a question that might seem very basic to you. It's not basic to both my listeners and myself.
Sure.
In theory, everyone understands why state elections are important, but what's the actual breakdown in terms of there are different elections for the center and there's different elections for each state. Now, say if the BJP doesn't win in a particular state, what's the actual impact of that happening on central elections? Why is it important to actually win in every state? Because everyone studies this in civics textbooks, but I don't think people understand the political reality in its entirety.
So, two ways. One, you as a citizen, how does it impact on you? Two, how does it impact on a political party? Three, how does it impact on governance, state election? Let me begin with political party. For a political party, winning every state election is important if they're a national party. For regional parties, absolutely important to win, because nahi to unka wajood kya hai? What is your identity if you can't win in your own state? For example, if in Telangana KCR's party loses, who's he then? What's his identity? If DMK loses in Tamil Nadu, what is their identity? It's not as if they're fighting in Haryana. So if they lose in Tamil Nadu, they're nobody. They're just in the opposition. For 5 years, their existence doesn't matter. So for them, it's very hard. That's a political party. For a national party also, like if they lose, say, like BJP just lost Karnataka, the Congress won in Karnataka. Now that means that the Congress is, on an upward trajectory. So when they have this opposition unity meets and things like that, they come from a stronger position. So if the other smaller parties turn around and say, hey, you hardly matter, you're not there in more than 2 states, they say, no. We are there now in 3 states. We are there in 4 states. We won Himachal. We won Karnataka. So they are in a driver's seat as far as opposition unity is concerned. That's political parties. How does it matter in governance? It matters in governance to a large extent, which if you have a party which is not the same party as the center, then for everything there is a pull and push which happens. You want to build a metro station. You want to build a railway station. You need funds. The center might, if they want to be nasty, the center might turn around and say, you put in your effort, you put in your money. You're supposed to put 20%. We're supposed to put 60%. The files might go back and forth. They might turn around and say, we'll put 20%, but then see, we've had a flood. We've had a drought. We don't have the money to put in the 20%. So can you put in the 60% this year? We'll put in the 20% next year. If it's the same political party, sometimes it works. But if it's a party which, doesn't want to do it, they might be mean. They might not agree. So those kind of things might happen in governance matters. A state might think that, just because we've had an opposition party or we've had a regional party in power in our state, that's why you've not built roads in our state. Right? You've not built highways in our state. Roads in the sense they built this smaller roads, but for state highways, for national highways, you've not done that. You've not made projects. You don't buy our food grain. You don't give us subsidies. So these kind of things happen sometimes when two different parties are in power. How does it affect you as a citizen? As a citizen, your only job is to elect somebody who listens to you, right? Who does things for you, who's a doer as far as... So when it comes to your panchayat level election, or if you're a villager, if it comes to your block development issues, you need to put people in place who do things for you. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. When it comes to state elections, people tend to vote with sentiment, with caste, with those kind of issues in mind, which shouldn't be the case. So I think voter education is important, where people need to know who to vote for. It's not just promises, it's also promises delivered in the past and the ability to deliver in the future.
Why don't we do a little breakdown of voter education? Okay. You're the right person for it.
What should you do as a voter?
Yeah, like what should an 18-year-old know?
Be aware in the sense of read newspapers, watch television, see podcasts, go into YouTube, understand what we've studied this in school, duties and rights, right? There's some basic things. If your roads are not good to your home, if the garbage is not being picked up, if you are unable to breathe the air because of the pollution, these are things which are not being done. Ask questions. Ask questions when people come to you for their vote, or punish them because it's not being done. Find out also who you are electing. Is your family electing because the person is... I'll tell you one example is that long ago, I was covering the campaigning of this person called VP Singh, who became Prime Minister of India. He was considered Mr. Clean. He's the one who brought about, who's brought about something called the Mandal thing, where reservations were given on the basis of caste. So he was seen as, and he's the one who dethroned supposedly Rajiv Gandhi, because he brought the whole Bofors allegation, and he was considered the middle class messiah. So I was covering his election, and everywhere he was talking about how he brought rights for the so-called untouchables of India, the Dalits and the absolutely marginalized people and the OBCs, the other backward castes. And he was talking about all of them. And after he left, then I spoke to the villagers. And when I asked them, he said, "Aap inko vote denge?" He says, "Haan, hum vote denge na. We'll vote because he's a Thakur, we are a Thakur." And I was like, so once it was over, when I went to interview him, I said, "Listen, you keep talking about that you've made the lower castes of our country stronger because of your legislations. Those people are voting for you because you're upper caste and they are upper caste." He just didn't have an answer. You understand? So even though benefits were coming to the lower castes in Uttar Pradesh, people who were voting for VP Singh were people from the upper castes who were voting for him. So it's a strange system where even in 2023, when elections happened in Karnataka, we were like, Lingayat vote kahan pe gaya? Vakaliga vote kahan pe gaya? So people were still voting on the basis of sect. Whether are Lingayats Hindus or Lingayats non-Hindus. So are they Shiv Bhakts but Hindus?
Wow.
We are getting stuck with this in 2023, which is so frustrating.
And that's the truth of the majority of our country, right?
Yeah.
Like the votes that actually make a difference, the quantum of votes that make a difference are chosen based upon sect, class, religion, etc.
Yeah. That's the sad thing. And what about the educated people? Tell me. People like you, people like my friends, my cousins, my relatives, and things like that. Those who come from educated families sometimes don't go to vote. Bangalore, look at Bangalore. Low voting turnout. People don't think, it doesn't affect us. How does it matter? It's just state elections. We'll vote in 2024 for national elections. Nonsense. You should vote for every election. It's your duty as a citizen. Your vote counts. And people who think we don't count, you might as well take a whip and start whipping yourself then. You're that stupid. You're that dumb to think that you don't matter as a citizen.
Okay. I still want to break down this whole state versus center thing. Why should the BJP be worried truly if another party, like say the Congress has won in Karnataka? And you said that basically the opposition then gains more force. But what is that more force that they gain? Specifically, what's the quantification of it?
In a democracy, it's good if we have a good opposition. It keeps the ruling party on its toes. And they know that they cannot mess around. So as far as the opposition is concerned, it's got bogged down by a whole lot of issues. But these unity moves and things like that, now they have a new agenda, which is somehow or the other defeat the BJP. Now, that is an electoral agenda of defeating the BJP. But people are smart. They want to know defeating the BJP is not something that affects me. I am going to vote. You tell me, how are you going to resolve? Like a person sitting in Kashmir, how are you going to resolve my issues? It's a person sitting in Mumbai, how are you going to resolve my issues? Just because NCP is joining in with Lalu Yadav. NCP is joining in with Mamta. How is that going to resolve my issue? Are you going to build a metro? Are you going to build a road? Are you going to improve the condition in my neighborhood? How are you going to do that? So what is your agenda for the country? What is your agenda for national security? What do you think should be done with China? What do you think should be done with Pakistan? Should we get closer to the US? What should we do? What is your agenda for the country? What is your main pyar ki rajniti and all that? People don't believe in that anymore. Similarly, for the BJP, they came with this whole thing of Congress Mukt Bharat. They have not managed to do that. So for them, to that extent, 10 years, Congress Mukt Bharat has not happened. I didn't believe, and I think it's wrong in certain ways to think for a political party to say that we will wipe out the existence of another political party. No. Who gave you that God-given right? You might believe that the Congress is not right for the country, but if they are getting elected, that means respect it. The people of the country want that party to stay. There is a large chunk of India which thinks that the Congress has a role to play in the country. So I think that they got a bloody nose and I was right in that. I'm not saying it with the sense of, I'm right, I know. No, I'm not saying it with that. I think it is that arrogance of being in power or arrogance of I am right always, which is something that all political parties should guard from. So why is it important to win election? It's important to win election because if you don't win an election, you cannot put your policies and programs into effect. And the other thing is that we spend a lot of effort in being centrist, right? Many of us think it's wrong to take a position right or left when you're doing the questioning, when you are a journalist in one way or the other. You may not have had the rigors of learning journalism, but the kind of work you do is journalism too. I've seen your questions that you put to Rajiv Chandrasekhar, to Piyush Goyal, to Jay Shankar, and to others also. You come from a space of journalism. Even when you do your mystical podcasts, I've seen that. They're not mystical. You're asking questions which a journalist would also ask. So we spend a lot of time thinking that as journalists, we should be centrist. That's not the case. Not many of us need to be that. You can be left or you can be right. The questions should represent both that you ask a person. Let me give you an example. In 2004 election, there was this magazine which came out with the photograph Vajpayee versus who. Vajpayee was loved so much. So this question of there was a blank page and who, really there was just a question mark because the opposition didn't have a candidate. So if you were to go as a young person in 2004 to say that, hey, if I don't vote for for Mr. Vajpayee, who's a much loved figure, who will I vote for then? Strangely enough, that question mark won. Vajpayee, who is one of the most loved prime ministers, I would think, after Nehru, maybe. Mrs. Gandhi was loved, but then she was hated too. Vajpayee never went through that hate phase. He was always adored a lot. That question mark won. So you can never write off a political party. Could anybody have imagined that I.K. Gujral or Deve Gowda would become prime minister? Even Deve Gowda wouldn't imagine that he would be prime minister of the country at that stage, or even I.K. Gujral. Some South Delhi kind of a politician who never went through the rigors of politics.
Okay.
He became.
What happened in 2004? How did they lose?
So in 2004, what happened was that there was this India shining moment. The BJP was doing so well. They had won 3 state elections, and they rescheduled the election. They held it earlier than it was supposed to hold. And I believe that what one has heard is that Prime Minister Vajpayee did not really want the elections to be held earlier. But the party, which is the BJP style, the BJP always is like the party karyakartas and the party circle, they hold a very strong view. So even if the prime minister is the party prime minister, if the party feels something, then the prime minister has to go with it.
Even now?
Even now.
Wow.
They have, like, the prime minister might say something to the BJP, but they have a very strong cadre-based thing. So the Prime Minister Modi is typical of the RSS culture and of the BJP culture. He has come from that RSS, BJP, the Jansangh, training. So he will give a lot of value to what Mr. Nadda would have to say. Not that Mr. Nadda will ignore what Mr. Modi has to say. They might be at 2 ends of the spectrum during a conversation which is held. But there is a lot of, they call it Chintan Manthan and they call it Chintan Baithak, where there's a lot of views which are shared. And it's not as if they will ignore the Prime Minister. No, I'm not saying that the Prime Minister was at that time was said, no, you don't know anything. No, that's not the case. But Prime Minister Vajpayee was also very unwell by that stage. He had a whole lot of health issues and things like that. He gave in to his advisors who said that they had more chance of winning, and they lost that election. And the opposition at that stage had no clue that they're going to be able to get that 272 number, but they did with a coalition getting together, and they formed a government, and the government lasted. So somehow or the other it lasted. I'm not saying it was good for the country or bad for the country. I'm nobody to judge, but it happened. So I never put it past this vagaries of our electoral system that to write off a political party to say haan nahi ho sakta.
Okay. Do you think we have actually gone into a bit of a presidential style election now, at least in the eyes of the general masses? Because from the little that I've figured through the show, I believe that we have. Like, even the general public votes for a person now versus like a party. Like, I don't think people are informed enough to know the nitty-gritties of the entire party, the performance. I'm talking about the extremely common man who's not even sitting in like tier 1. Which is actually the bulk of the country.
Okay. I think it's more personality driven, but not presidential. I would hesitate to say that, because if you were to say presidential, then you would have to see the American system. So we don't have that. We have taken some of the stuff from the American Constitution, some of the stuff from the British Constitution, and made a constitution of our own. But yeah, it's personality based, certainly true. Also, you have a prime minister right now who's a very strong prime minister. So a number of people win their Lok Sabha elections, win their state elections, everything based on his charisma. So pitted against him is the Congress party, which has not been able to bring up Rahul Gandhi to that level. The Bharat Jodo Yatra, I think to a certain extent, was aimed at that, to give an alternative to a Modi, his style of being a leader as compared to that. Because we had 10 years, remember, of a prime minister who was a very humble, self-effacing, staying away from the limelight. So the rise of Modi was supposed to happen, or happened because of that. Because the country wanted this really strong leader. I think the country was ready for that. like Mrs. Gandhi came in after, you had Shastri ji, who was again a mild-mannered, soft, though he won a war at one point of time. But in spite of that, he came across as a softer, milder kind of a thing. And then you had Mrs. Gandhi coming in. Against her aggression, you had the Janata Party came in, where you had Morarji Desai. And then you had that conglomerate which came in, which with Morarji Desai. There are others who came in. There was a Charan Singh, Raj Narayan. Right now, when you look back at that age and you think, seriously, these people they were ruling the country. They took us back so much. We became so ultra-socialist and things like that. But these are things, checks and balances, which happen in a democracy like ours.
Do you think history repeats itself in a span of 50 to 60 years as well?
I really am not... I don't know so much about political science to say whether it's 50 years, 30 years or 10 years. But I think there are checks and balances in our system where when people get tired of a certain kind of rule, they elect a mess, maybe. They elect, I remember there was this rally in which Vajpayee said, "वो खिचड़ी पका रहे हैं, हम खीर पका रहे हैं." You understood? Khichdi is a mix and bland and boring, which is a coalition, as compared to kheer paka rahe hain, something which we're going to give you something which is tastes good, smells good, feels good, will be good for your system. So, and strangely, his favorite food is supposed to be khichdi.
Is PR and marketing a massive part of winning elections? Like, how massive is it truly? I would assume it's actually everything.
Frustrating it is, yes.
It's everything.
Yes, it is. The dangers is if the danger is if they get led, if a political party get led totally by the fakery of PR. PR also is that your product has to be good, to market it well, to image it well, to present it well. If you are going to have a khota sikka, if you're going to have a product which is damaged and fake, and you paper it well and post it and expect sales to happen, to some extent it will. And then you as an ad agency, as a PR, are going to suffer too. The product suffers too because totally rejected. So I just feel that those who think that their content is rubbish and they take good PR, Bollywood has learned that, right? And more so political parties. I think that political parties are savvy enough to realize that don't go completely on PR, do the work on the ground. Those who are not doing their work on the ground, if you see... you can go on once long ago when I'd gone to Gujarat and I'd interviewed the CM and he said, "Jab tak main pani nahi pahunchaunga na ghar mein, unless there is tap in the water and unless the river water has come to the farmer, he's not going to believe that, oh, Modi is a great CM. They won't vote me back to power. Unless I build that road, that the panwala who's sitting on that road just hoping that wo koi jayega, aayega on that highway will stop and buy pan from me is not going to happen. So unless I give a good road and there is a stop sign where people will come and eat and after eating will go to the pan, he's not going to do it. So dhanda has to work, no? So I think pure PR won't work. PR with good content, good product will work.
Okay. And I have so much to say about this PR and marketing angle because, hey, apparently I'm also a part of it.
Yeah.
People think I got paid by the government to do cabinet minister interviews.
Saw that.
I did it because it was the next obvious progression as a podcaster. I didn't get paid a single rupee.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed talking to them. I feel like as a podcaster, you need to get to know what's happening in your country and you need to reveal it to the audiences.
Yeah.
So I'll lap up the criticism because my idol is Cristiano Ronaldo and that's what I've learned from him. And I'll use it to get better. I do intend on bringing the opposition.
Good for you.
Yeah, I thrive off of people shooting arrows at me. But It's a little masochistic content creator vibe.
I get that. I mean, I was horrified that, people were attacking podcasters. And I won't be surprised if this also comes from disgruntled journos who don't like the idea that they didn't get those interviews and those guys went to the podcasters. In fact, I'll tell you honestly, I also had this twinge of envy that, wow, like back to back 3 ministers or 4 ministers who went on these podcasts, like amazing work. Then I felt that that's great. That means that even the government is recognizing the value of the podcast. Believe me, when I started out 6-7 months back, nobody wanted to come on the podcast. I said, why will you come on this? Why don't you take us instead for, on your channel, on your agency? It'll go to all the channels. Why YouTube? Kaun aayega? The same people who, I think one should keep a diary, who said, I don't want to come on your podcast, now are calling to say, yeah, we want to come on your podcast. Same big shots who were like not interested at all, want to come. And others don't realize it, that we could be calling people over to chat with them for no money. Did you at any point of time, or did anybody question how these ministers go to all the conclaves of news organizations? Are those news organizations not getting ads? Right? Did anybody question that? Why are they getting so many ministers? Nobody questions them. Why? Just because they're journalists who are doing the questioning. But if they come on podcast, then how dare you go? Why? Those guys are getting millions. The podcasters are getting millions of viewers. The channels are not getting so many millions. So,
I also want to say something cliched here. Again, I didn't ask for it. It came to me. But I know the amount of work I've put in for the 8 years prior to this moment of getting
why are you feeling so thing about even asking? Chalega na? That's your work to get people on your podcast who are interesting. So even asking is not wrong.
Yeah. Okay, let's just speak on behalf of all the anti-Modi janta that actually has a problem that I've done this. I get that their problem is this perception that now I am a tool of the government and I'm like doing their PR. But the truth is I'm just a podcaster learning how to do political podcasts. And this was the first opportunity I got. You give me the opposition, I'll do like the opposition podcasts as well. I'm not trained as a journalist. I won't ask the hard-hitting political questions. I want to get to know the human. I want to get to know what they've gone through. And then as the viewers, you guys can come to your own conclusions about it. Now, in saying all of this, my actual intention here is to get Virat Kohli.
I agree with you.
People can have all their stories that they're cooking up about me. I'm going to keep continuing.
Yeah.
And even if there is criticism, I strongly have always believed that all forms of publicity are good publicity. My stuff is growing. So I'm more than happy. I'm happy to be a target of envy also, honestly, because it's a validation for your work.
Yes.
And I'm not going to be doing podcasting for longer than 5 years. So I might as well milk it while it's doing well.
Who knows, where life goes. And I mean, maybe there's another platform like YouTube. Who knows?
Yeah.
Their platforms will keep changing.
I also want to say that often the anti-Modi part of our society, which is a lot of South Bombay, South Delhi, like the elite classes, have a problem that India's falling behind. Well, okay. If India's truly falling behind and your reference point is, say, America or the West, there is a podcasting culture there where politicians come on podcasts. People have appeared on Joe Rogan. Political commentary happens on podcasts. So if we're moving in that direction, support me. I will talk for you as well. I will, talk on your behalf.
Absolutely. Politicians are going to come as soon as the numbers come, because politicians are only looking for voter base, no? Ultimately, a politician looks for what? People who will listen to him or her, will understand, and you are giving a platform. Why will they not come to you? Of course they'll come to you, and it doesn't matter, and you don't need to validate your point of view that I'm centrist, I'm not a tool, I'm not. People are going to make, as you get more success, people will make these kind of comments. And at some point of time, you have to just say, F it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You do what your conviction tells you.
What's the truth about the interiors of the country with this whole internet penetration thing happening? I have heard stories like, kids who were in villages whose parents didn't even have televisions are now listening to K-pop, like Korean pop, watching K-dramas, like getting into Korean culture. and some of them are even learning Korean, which is so strange.
Yeah, strange.
Like they're farming and listening to K-pop. So this country is going into an extremely, I don't want to use a negative word, but like I was going to say strange, but I'll actually replace that with interesting phase of its own growth.
Yeah.
And obviously, if they're getting access to K-pop and K-drama, they are getting access to podcasts, they're getting access to BBC, they're getting access to people like yourself. So I think the learning's also becoming extremely ferocious.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what happens over the next 2 decades.
It'd be so interesting, no? To be, as they say, we're living in interesting times. Look at the photographs now, Ranveer. Like if your parents show you photograph of when they went villages, they went to villages of India. Look at the clothes that people were wearing, right? You knew immediately farak kya hai, right? They were in dhotis and they were women had their head covered in many places, dupatta or whatever. And in other places, like there are places I have seen women in some sections of when I was a kid, I've seen in some places where women didn't wear blouse. They just wore a sari and the palla around. They didn't have blouse. You don't see that anymore. As far as covering the head is concerned, in many places you don't see it, which you used to say. You went to Haryana, you only saw salwar kameez and sir dhaka hua ya yahan tak, or in Rajasthan, to many places you saw that. That's all changing. That's one of the earliest, again, I'm coming back to UP Bihar because, those were considered so backward that it comes as a shocker to you when you go to those areas, that you see that kind of abject poverty. So that was my first. And then I realized how insulated we are, living in cities sometimes. Even when you went to the villages, you went to your nani ghar, dadi ghar, that's about it, right? Or if you went tourism or something, you stuck in that hill station or you went to a beach resort. You didn't really go and mingle with people. I was just talking to a journalist. I was interviewing her and she was saying that how she went to Mayawati's rally and she started crying in the podcast when she was saying that she went to that rally and she saw that there wasn't a single person who was wearing a cotton sari. Everybody was wearing polyester, and because they couldn't afford cotton sarees. How things have changed, right, in our country, because polyester is easy to maintain, so people went into polyester sarees. My first impression, I still remember, is that somebody was talking, you're Dalit and all. I said, how do you know कि वो Dalit है? He could be an OBC or whatever, no? So he says, uske pair dekho. So I just looked and I said, what does that have to do? He says, because they're not allowed to wear shoes. So
Not allowed to wear shoes.
So they have cracks in their feet. So even when they go to the city, when they wear chappal, with the cracks of their feet, they knew ki wo Dalit hai.
But why are you not allowed to wear shoes?
That was the casteism that was practiced, no, Ranveer? There are certain places where Dalits were not allowed to, or even backward caste, not necessarily the most backward, Ati Dalit bhi nahi, but Dalit or even slightly above, they were not allowed to own land, only work as landless laborers. So you continue, maybe say they sent their daughter or son to study. वो IAS चला गया, he's become an IAS officer, she's become an IAS officer. Maybe through the quota system or whatever the system, but she's become, so there is some kind of money which is coming into that Dalit person's home because money order economy. That money is coming in. Makes a pakka house, but still is in that Dalit village. If he or she wanted to buy a plot of land, to cultivate that plot of land, it took a long, long time because that it wouldn't be registered. Now, by law, he can. By law, that farmer can go and buy land. But it never used to happen. They wouldn't, file gum jayega, something will happen. So there was a Dalit village and an upper caste village. So you can't buy that. Same way Hindu Muslim. This is a Muslim gully. So the shops will be Muslim. Hindus won't be there. Hindu ki dukaan nahi hogi. Agar Hindu area hai to Muslim ka nahi hoga. These are things which bother you. You want that in this day and age, a person like you doesn't want that the India 20 years from now should still have these
These are the dark truths of
Yeah.
rural India, even in 2023.
Yeah, and even in urban and semi-urban India, it is there. In tier 2 cities, it's still there. A Hindu-Muslim shadi is not all that common. And when it is, it's fraught with all kinds of dangers.
Dangers.
Yeah, because mobs come after you. They still run away. Even though there is a Special Marriages Act, there is provision that you can marry whoever you want to. In spite of that, it comes with dangers unless you're super affluent and it doesn't matter to you. I mean, a Bollywood actress marrying a Bollywood actor or a politician who two different religion, unko to koi farak nahi padega na. Unless you're that super rich or you're super successful and you have that kind of thing, nothing will happen to you. But otherwise, it is not easy still.
The one thing I have found weird about traveling in a lot of parts of North India is that people will see me, assume that I'm from a city because of the way I'm dressed, have a nice friendly conversation with me, and by the 5-minute mark or 10-minute mark in the conversation, they'll ask me for my surname, which is Allahbadia, which is ambiguous. Then usually it's a Hindu person who I end up meeting, and they ask me, so are you Muslim? So I'm saying, no, I'm Hindu. And the next question is, par Allahbadia matlab kya? And they're actually asking me for my caste.
Correct.
And I'm like, yo, why should I tell you my caste?
Yeah.
But for them, it's a very normalized
That's true.
question. And that's when you realize, oh shit, this is not even a village. This is Banaras. This is, Shimla. Parts of India like that are still concerned with what your caste is. So you can't imagine what rural India is like.
Yeah. So there is discrimination. I totally get that, there are many, my name you can't tell what my caste is or anything like that. But yeah, when my first exposure to caste, I guess that's because it's also a privilege, Ranveer, because you have not faced discrimination. It's not as if you've lived your life in a metro, but even in a metro, if you come from a different caste, from a caste which has faced discrimination, you would face it even in a metro. Maybe not to the extent that you would in a tier 2 town or a village, but it's very, very there.
Like what happens?
In school, it will happen.
Really?
Oh yes. It happens in subtle manners in cities because people know that they ought not to say it openly. But in tier 2 towns and all, it just comes very naturally. They will not. I have seen a very senior politician, I'm not going to name, but a very senior politician. I was covering the Rath Yatra and of Advani ji. And you kind of will figure out who I'm talking about, but I will not name. So the media sits and eats, right? So hum log sab saath mein baith rahe the. We were just about 5-6 of us covering that stretch of the Rath Yatra, and the food came in. And I saw this person who was not very senior at that time, and he was sitting separately. He was not sitting with us. He was just sitting alag se. So I just asked the person next to me, said, why is he sitting separately? I thought he's angry with us or something like that. That's why he's sitting separately. Saying no, because the person sitting on your left is a Brahmin, and so that person is sitting separately because he thinks that maybe that guy will not like it that he's sitting with you.
Wow.
And I'm not sure that the person on the left was actually saying that or was practicing it or whatever, or has a reputation or not, or that person out of scene na ban jaye, was sitting separately. But he's obviously faced that kind of discrimination in the past. Okay. Right? So he's faced it, and that's why he'd rather not have the embarrassment, so he would do that. Another place that I went to, I was an academic that I was interviewing, again regarding politics, but I was sitting there and talking, and your guys came and gave me water. So they kept a banana and water. I was like, who keeps a banana? And kept tea. So I said, nahi, main chai nahi piyungi, main chai nahi peeti hu. So he's saying, aap kela to kha sakte hain, kele mein kya hai? So I was like, why? So then I said, okay, so just in case they feel that I'm not eating. So I peeled it and I ate it. And when I went out, my cameraman told me that he is from a low caste. He thought that you are upper caste and you're not drinking the tea. So that's why kela was kept, because kela you peel and eat and it doesn't matter which caste you are. I felt so terrible. I said, but I don't practice casteism. How did he know what my caste is? And so he said, they inherently know. So they, as a reflex mechanism, they kept that. You know how I felt so shitty, pardon me for using that word. I felt shitty at that time about my privilege, that generations of my people from my caste was somehow made this person who has, who's seen it maybe, or who knows it from experience.
This is the Desi version of white privilege.
Yeah. So I didn't realize it till I got to the workplace. I didn't face it. That is my privilege, that I didn't face atrocity. So it's not my fault that I didn't face it. So I can get aggressive and say कि मेरी क्या गलती है, मैंने थोड़ा ना किया, मेरे पूर्वज ने किया होगा और वो भी नहीं मुझे पता मेरे पूर्वज ने किया कि नहीं किया, But the fact is that it takes generations for confidence to build in people who for generations have been subjugated.
Okay. This is not the end of the podcast. We've been speaking for a bit.
Oh yeah.
You want to end it?
No, that's you're the boss. You decide.
I want to keep talking to you. I'm going to learn a lot.
Okay, whatever you want.
What else do you know stuff about?
Gyan. That's one thing I don't want to be sitting out here and giving you gyan. I've come to learn, right? You're my senior.
What would you like to learn?
Yeah, so I am amazed that you keep that innocence alive still in your podcast. That you've been doing it for so long and you haven't got jaded doing that. You aren't this Gyani who are sitting there, I know everything.
And I totally was, ma'am.
Yeah?
I used to be, until my bros just made me sit down and say that you're changing as a person.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think it's very important to be in touch with your childhood friends.
Oh.
And that's also something I learned off of the show.
Okay.
I think the most relaxed / one of the most successful people I met through the show was Sid Roy Kapoor, who's a producer in the Hindi film industry. Yeah. He said that it's damn important to keep your childhood friends near you. Oh. And I feel also, honestly, YouTube is such a strange career because I got to meet Virat Kohli this year. 3-4 months ago. And it was one of the biggest moments of my life. I couldn't sleep the night after I met him. And I was just like, there's nothing left after this. There's no other aspiration for me. And then parallelly, through my job, I'm getting to meet Bollywood stars, politicians, people like yourself, intellectuals, thought leaders. So I'm getting this very weird top view of our country. I'm seeing what everyone thinks, and that makes me feel very strange to have got it so early in life, which earlier in my career has made me extremely arrogant. So It's something I have to keep battling, and I've just got some very dear friends around me. So I guess that's my angle, but also I think it's very important to be funny and relatable, and the moment you start becoming arrogant, you lose both.
Absolutely. I think even these television in journalism, those who are such pompous they get, simply because like I told you earlier, they hang around powerful people and they think that hum bhi kuch bahut badi cheez hai. I told Prime Minister this, I told this one this, I told, dropping
memes.
Prime Ministers don't take decisions because a journo told them that. Don't be silly, So those who take themselves so seriously in life, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think I matter. I don't think what I say matter. So if anybody comes and tells me, ugly bari election kaun jeetega, I was like, what should I tell you? I don't know myself, man. I know just as much as you do. So it's like, don't give me this, how is this person as this powerful person, how's he as a person, how's she as a person? Mereko kya pata how she is as a person. When she goes home, how she is, that's what matters. No, her family knows. I don't know. And so I don't think we should, as journalists, we should keep that distance. We should never get pally with powerful people, because then we lose perspective.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's an intense thought.
Yeah, that's wrong. I never count powerful people as my friends. Never. being friendly is different, Ranveer, but not being friends, because then you're losing your perspective. You're losing, they can be doing weird stuff. It's your job to report on that. And they might just turn around and say, you are a friend. How can you report this? No, sorry.
Damn.
Gotta do it. Yeah. So that's where the problem occurs, when those guys don't have the maturity to understand that I will be chatting with you. I'll be friendly with you. I like you as a person. I understand we have the same worldview, but your party F's up or you do something dreadfully wrong. I'm reporting.
Other than this whole caste system angle that we spoke about, is there any other dark reality of interior India or rural India that you've encountered, which you were shocked to encounter? I'm sure there's like a whole gender angle here. Girls are not given any opportunity or education, which starves them of opportunity as well. Am I right in saying that, or is that changing?
A lot of it, I think real India people in the cities don't realize it and don't want to face it also. The stories that come from that part of India, they are unpleasant, right? After a whole day's work, when you come back home tired and you switch on your TV, basically you want entertainment. You don't want to... And sometimes the stories, like if you see some of the shows which have done very well, you see Sacred Games and all, it's a different kind of entertainment. It's like even Gangs of Wasseypur and all these kind of movies, they're about real India and all that, right? They shock you. That's different, but it's still make believe. But the real India, like, when you see the 60% of your India lives in villages. Out of that, you take maybe 30% where basic needs they are struggling to meet. So people like us, when we go in, I think especially journalists or especially people who are lucky enough that we have a platform to present India, we need to put those stories out too. And there are many people who will say, ye daloge to look at the view, look at what people will say. This is India. The world doesn't want to see this India and things like that. No, our leaders also must see that India. Our people also must realize. Our children, our elders, some of our elders, parents, good intention, kept us insulated from truth to some extent. Didn't let us see, because they have seen want, like those who have seen difficult days of partition, kept their children away from it, didn't tell the story of what the atrocities that they faced or what happened and all, because they didn't want them to know that they should have a happy childhood. So didn't tell about those harsh stories, what they went through. They didn't tell them that. They kept them insulated, right? Sometimes they would say ki haan wo bahut bure din the or something, and the children then, because they've not heard it, they're like, your old stories, your rone dhone wali kahaniyan nahi sunna chahte hum. Whose fault? It's their fault also, no? By insulating those children, after a certain age, they don't want to know about this.
There is an American YouTube channel which has come up in the last 1 or 2 years, and that the guy who started it was on Joe Rogan recently. Okay, the YouTube channel is called Soft White Underbelly, and I highly recommend that everyone goes and watches this. What he does is he tries showing the underbelly of America, which is drug addicts, pimps, prostitutes, inbred families, everything dark and morbid that you can think of related to American society. He's shown on that channel. Every single video is the same. It's a 40-minute video of a person sitting on a chair. He first has comfortable conversation with them, makes them open up, and then makes them relay the entire story of their life. And it's extremely dark and morbid, and it's got millions and millions of views. And it's one of the few new age American channels that's really come up only in the last 1 or 2 years. Usually what happens in America trickles down to India in about 5 years' time.
And look at it. Why has it come up? Because their traditional media did not cover this.
His story, this guy, I think his name is Mark Leiter. He used to work in advertising, and he had become a kingpin in advertising over the last 30 years. And he's like, my whole existence and my career had become so glossy that I wanted to balance it out with reality. And he's like, I actually put my own life at risk by doing these.
Fabulous.
Because he's actually going out on the street, if he gets a prostitute, the pimp comes after his life. So he's like, I have to change my studio location. I've been in all sorts of situations. He cried on Joe Rogan's podcast and he said that, I know it's dangerous, but this is really therapeutic. I feel like I have only sold lies for the last 30 years.
Wow.
Because that was the nature of commercial advertising.
Yeah.
It's that whole angle about how a burger looks great in an advertisement, but when you actually go buy it, it's not that glossy.
Gosh, I couldn't last for more than how many? 6 months I did of advertising. I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't. Like, I know one month I was just researching on ghee. I was like, और मैं नहीं कर सकती हूँ. And then there was chips, Uncle Chips. And there was something else. I mean, I was like, नहीं हो रहा, boss, मेरे से. I can't, So, but it's okay. I'm not demeaning that profession. But what I'm saying is that you have to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
If you want to make an impact. And it depends on what you want to do.
Yeah.
You want to be in advertising, you want to be in PR. We run down PR. It's important too. Advertising. There are so many toothpastes, right? Actually, what? How is your toothpaste different from the other? It's how you tell the story. That's why advertising is important also. Because किसी ने कह दिया long का, there's long clove in my toothpaste. Everybody uses it. Everybody has it. The ingredient is the same. But it's how you tell your story. So what this guy is doing is also the fallback of, there is certain stories that you switch on American media, you switch on American television and you realize, oh my God, you are so cut off from what is happening in the country. You're cut off. For 4 years, all they were doing was Trump. Trump is stupid, Trump is idiotic, Trump is this. That's all they were covering. And they were getting their ratings in some way. They were surviving in some manner. I don't know how. But their ratings went up doing the anti-Trump coverage when Trump was president of the country. And now when Biden is president of the country, their entire focus is, oh my God, he may not be great, but if he moves, then Trump will become. How many years will you do your content on just Trump? So that's why podcasts are doing well. Why do you think all these podcasts, all this alternate news sites are doing well? Because people are sick and tired. But there's no way to dislodge. But if you don't learn to move with the times, you will die out. That's how newspapers have died out.
Okay. Yeah, the natural progression again.
Yeah.
Goes back to the start.
Either modify or else perish.
Okay. This whole Mark Later soft white underbelly channel, I think India is going to see a version of that in like 5 years where we speak about stories of this 30% where you said that, these guys are in abject poverty.
Yeah.
They're thinking about where the next meal will come from. This is also the population that doesn't have the internet yet, right? Like I think in our country, 1.5 billion people, only 800 million-ish have the internet in their hands. And it's a tool for education. Do you have any guesses about when this remaining section will get the internet?
So it's, I saw when the lines were being laid, So the point is that when Dhirubhai Ambani said, sabke paas mobile hoga, people laughed. We don't have water connection in our country. You don't have electricity in our country. You don't have, forget water connection. You don't have access to potable water. You have to walk miles to get water. I remember also those, you must have seen those films also, na? Women with pots of water on their head and all that. So when India dikhana chahte hain, women in a sari carrying, all of those women died. Spondylitis ho gaya, bone injury ho gayi, carrying pots of water. Try doing that, na? Try balancing that. I used to get irritated as hell when I used to see those visuals. So, the thing is that when he said that every Indian will have a mobile phone, people used to laugh. But how many millions have it now, right? Like we are on the way. It takes time in our country simply because of our size and our population. But even though there is poverty and there's that basic cheezon ke liye there is need, it still is percolating. There is a trickle-down effect which is happening. You did not have connectivity in vast sections. I know for a fact that when I was covering election in one particular area, and it was a Naxal-infected area. affected area. And there was a section where there was no phone network. So we were going to be traveling at night in about a 2.5 hour journey after sundown in that area with no phone connectivity.
Damn.
Yeah. So, right. So, and there were Naxals everywhere and there was mafia and things like that. So the option was, do we stay back here and not go forward? Or should we just take the risk and go forward? Because if you stay back and the Naxals come there, then it's a problem. We did go. There was no phone connectivity. Today, you cover any area and every area in the country. You have connectivity, unless it's like hilly region in Northeast India, maybe in some areas, you don't have connectivity. Now you have that connectivity. So before going, you can give location to your office and to your family that you're going here and you'll be there next. For years, it was not there. So there's a lot which has happened which we take for granted, because when you didn't have it, you didn't even realize that there could be a world where you had connectivity. So even now, I mean, there are in villages and all that, when they are able to connect with family, with their sons and daughters who have gone abroad, and they can see their grandchildren on FaceTime, even though they live in villages where there was no phone connectivity till a few years back. So they never saw like almost 10 to 15 years of their children who went abroad. You know, now they can see their grandchildren.
Do you count this as a win of the Modi government? Because it's how it's projected in the media, or is it the natural progression of our country and the natural progression of Mukesh Ambani?
Yeah. So I think all three.
Okay.
All three things fell into place. India was ready for an Ambani, Tata, Adani. All these people, they are wealth creators. I hate the demonization of these people. Yes, of course, if they've done something wrong legally, catch them. But the way wealth creators are demonized in this country, I seriously feel that it's that socialist mindset that we all grew up in the 70s and before that. It's the remnants of that, where we see rich people and think chore hai.
It's dying out though.
Yeah, it is. I think people now look at rich people and say, okay, let me put my bandwagon with put my wagon with that person and then learn how, right? Okay, here's a successful person. I'm a cameraman. He's a podcaster. Let me see, instead of running him down, let me see if he has a job for me.
The bitter truth is Gen Z listens to money.
Yeah.
On multiple levels.
Yeah. So I think economic prosperity important. India was ready for economic prosperity. Today's day and age, unless you bring prosperity right to that person who didn't have it. So Modi, yes, because he comes from that Antyodaya aspect, that BJP has that thing, that the last man standing has to get the benefit of every rupee that you have earned in the country. So they have that as that. When they came into power, they had a 15-year game plan that I know of. Maybe they have a 25-year game plan, possible. But I know that they had a 15-year game plan. And the very first speech that he gave from the Red Fort, he spoke about Swachh Bharat. He spoke about cleanliness and toilets. Where did you hear that, Ranveer? Did we know about that? I, as a journalist, know this. That when we used to all women journalists, let me tell you on your show, I don't think many people know about this. All women journalists of my generation, we all have stomach-related problems. Why do we have it? We all have health-related problems. Why? Because there are no loos in this country for women. There were no loos. So if we would go out for, say, election coverage, हम लोग सुबह निकलते थे hotel से, till we didn't come back in the evening.
Wow.
There's no place to go to a loo. Men can go anywhere, no, behind the bush.
Damn.
What do you do? So you don't eat or drink. And elections, mind you, are held in summer. We don't eat or drink because if you eat or drink and you may need to use the loo, what do? So these are things which people take for granted, but there are stories which were never told. Today, thanks to him making it out in the open that you can talk about lack of toilets. You can talk about sanitary napkins in places. Jaya Bachchan spoke about on a podcast where she said that when they used to go out on shoots, there was no place to change your sanitary napkin. Can you imagine an actress of her caliber today talking about it? Why? Because the movie called Padman got made. Because India is ready to talk about things which nobody spoke about.
This is what I dislike about the extreme left. For example, I have a bunch of friends who are extreme left.
It's fine. It takes all kinds, right?
I appreciate the input in places, but they completely discount the positives of the Modi government. Like, for example, when this whole, like, he was in the US now and the speech happened, they won't say that, oh, did you see Modi's speech? They'll say, oh, yeah, did you, like, see the speech? Well, did you see the reporter asking questions about atrocities from 2002? Like, it always goes into, like, the marketing criticism tangents without actually understanding the entire breakdown. Sure, highlight, like, the negatives, but know about the positives of this government as well. There's a reason that they're still in power.
Everything, both sides went wrong, no? In the sense that it was a successful visit, it became victimhood. कि हाय ओबामा ने हमारे बारे में ऐसे बोला. Oh no, that woman, one woman asked a question in a press conference and I think the Prime Minister answered well. He gave a stock shot answer of what happens, that India doesn't believe our constitution itself, we are a democracy. Of course, Prime Ministers answer like that. Tell me one Prime Minister who's admitted that we have issues, that we have riots in our country. No, when you go abroad, you say this about your country. When Obama comes, is he asked about when American presidents, why Obama? When Clinton came, did people ask him about that, oh, you have racism in your country? Blacks are ill-treated in your country? Are people, did anybody ask him that? No. Because he's American president. He's deigned to come to a country like ours. Shashat Naman, Shashtang Pranam, that an American president came to your country. When Putin came, or Brezhnev came, or anybody came from Russia, पूछा उनसे, where is democracy in your country? You have autocracy in your country. When Xi Jinping came, पूछा उनसे, nobody from our country ever asked, because Atithi Devo Bhava. We don't ask these uncomfortable questions.
Do you think it'll change?
As we get more confident in our own skin, we will dare to ask these questions.
So you don't think we're there yet?
I don't think we're there as yet. I haven't seen that kind of putting on the mat. Because we keep thinking that, I'm saying we in the sense of talking on behalf of Indian journalists, which I don't think I should, but I'm just saying that the idea is that here's a head of state or government who has come. So don't ask a softball question, but ask a question relating to your country and their country, which ought to be the case. Right? I want to know that when you ask a head of state who has come from another country about issues with your country, you are an American. How does it matter to you what happens in India as far as domestic issues are concerned? You should be asking the American president, is it in America's benefit to have relations with India? Modi just is a prime minister who represents India. Did you ask about India, US? No. You were asking about Modi as a person.
What was the exact question?
So the question was about you say that there is democracy in our country and things like that. It's okay. She's a journalist. She's welcome to ask any question. When I say that she should have asked, again, I'm falling into the trap of, say, probably thinking that as a journalist, what I would have asked. I also asked a question of President Obama in the White House when Dr. Manmohan Singh did the state visit. That's the only other one that happened, like Modi's first state visit. Manmohan Singh did that, right? It was in 2009, if I'm not mistaken. So at that time, I asked Obama about having Pakistan as an ally when it is supporting terrorism. When I asked that question, it's not just about Pakistan, America. It's about us as Indians being a victim of terrorism. Right? So my question was on that. But it's all right. She's a journalist. She asked a question. वो answer हो गया. अब हमको क्यों इतना obsess होना है about a question? Good. She asked a question and the Prime Minister answered properly. So it was okay. So why make such a big deal about a question being asked? How dare she have the guts to ask this question and then make it about her and about her antecedents, whether she's a Muslim or a Hindu, and about Pakistani or an Indian. Never mind. Even if she's a Pakistani asking a question, chalega. How does it matter? Ask the question, answered, nikal jao. It was a damn good, successful visit as far as India is concerned. Bask in that.
Why?
It's good for us. We've signed defense deals. We've signed trade deals. We're going to get investment into our country. America is going to benefit too. They're selling to us. They're going to have more jobs because of what we are doing. So it's a win-win situation for both countries. We're not sitting in their lap, because I think America today is understanding that India is a country you can do business with, but you cannot twist and turn them. We are not like a South Korea. We are not like any other state that they have as an ally. They are respecting that we have a foreign policy which may not be in sync with them in certain matters. It's fine. I think there is a maturity in their government. And I don't mean just Democrat. It doesn't matter which party comes to power out there. I think in their decision making, there is a kind of maturity to understand that there is multiplicity of views in India, even with regard to foreign policy. And we will take decisions in the international forum which benefits India. And that can mean at any point of time being an ally or purchasing military goods from Russia, from Europe, from anywhere else. Doesn't matter what America's view is on that.
Okay, I have to ask you again, for the sake of teenage listeners and people who don't know too much about foreign policy, could you do like a 2023 Indian foreign policy for dummies kind of?
No.
Because it's too complex?
No, because it's so dynamic. No, it changes every other day. But yes, let me just, if I was to just say what is different in the way foreign policy is done today as compared to maybe 10 years back or 15 years back, I think India, it's basically the India story, right? When Modi came in 2014, there's one section which thought that we're going to have a very muscular foreign policy. That means we're going to be aggressive towards our neighbors and towards how we position ourselves internationally. What you don't realize, or what people didn't realize, it to have a muscular foreign policy, first you have to have domestically, you have to be strong now. How can you be aggressive towards anybody, and for no reason you can't be aggressive? How is it going to serve your purpose? So unless you're domestically strong, unless your manufacturing industry, unless your exports, unless you're strong and your economy is doing well, aggression is zilch. Then you will be like a Pakistan which is aggressive. Just because of your geopolitical thing, tumne ek suicide vest pen liya and aggressive ho gaye, that I'll blow up anybody who comes. So I'm aggressive. That kind of aggression doesn't work in a democracy. We are a functioning democracy. So I think many people misunderstood the muscular democracy kind of muscular foreign policy in doing that. What did happen was that the BJP is not a shrinking violet. So they are not from that non-aligned movement. Hum sweet se log hain piche baith ke. No, they're rising to the occasion. And here we now have a foreign policy where we have decided, or we are telling the world that our voice matters. Not just because we are 1.4 billion today, but we are also representative of these developed nations which want a strong voice, which talks about equality, which talks about that you cannot have any organization like a UN Security Council or any organization today without an India rep. What are you talking about? How? And as we get a voice of our own, I think our foreign policy is getting more confidence. I think our our young officers, when they go, speak with a sense of purpose, with a sense of pride. When an officer goes and speaks at the UN, she knows that she represents a country which believes in our values of free speech, in freedom and in democracy. We have our fissures, we have our flaws, but I think there is a confidence in our youth. There is a confidence in our policymakers today.
Okay. What are our flaws?
Which many of us, we are a noisy democracy. So we are people who will voice our opinions. We are somebody who, we have our diversity, which is our strength, but the diversity also causes fissures in our system. It pulls apart people. We have our issues of caste, we have our issues of language, our religion, so many things which pull us apart also. But at the same time, there are people in this country who believe that despite all our diversities, we are one country, we are one nation, right? And there are people who try to divide us. Because when I say people, people make fun ke foreign hand, but of course there is foreign hand. Who likes the idea of another country becoming more important than the others, right? It was a unipolar world, just America. Then there was the G2, that Russia to hati gaya tha, Soviet Union hati gaya tha, Soviet Union broke up, and there's Russia. Now there's China. China has a worldview that this America is a dying, decaying power. It is us. Europe is anyway falling apart because of various reasons. So China wants to come into that single unipolar world where they are the one thing. That is Xi Jinping's wet dream. So he wants that, all right? He wants to be there. Here is an India which is rising and coming up. So it doesn't suit anybody's purpose. And of course, there are people in our neighborhood who are not comfortable with that idea. And even friends of ours are not comfortable with that idea. People who are our allies in some way or the other, if you want to call it ally, our friends, our neighbors who saying, who likes if your neighbor suddenly becomes prosperous, ultra prosperous, even in a society, dekh lo aap. In a housing society, if one person suddenly gets a Mercedes, suddenly in the sense of 3 saal mein suddenly gets, right? Ek Mercedes bhi khareed liya, 3-4 ghar mein house help bhi aa gaya. Suddenly they're wearing designer clothes and like, oh, look at this. Wow, what is this? Johnny come lately. How's he become? So I'm just saying that even in a housing society, you have that problem. So imagine country-wise, like neighborhood also. Some countries have policymakers who are smart enough and say that, hey, here's a country which is going to become super $1 trillion economy, and we are still in a $1 billion economy. Let's join with them. Let's have trade routes with them, free trade agreement with them, so that, we can join up with them. Sri Lanka is a country which is thinking like that. That somebody who wants to come to India for tourism, let's make our airport in such a manner that wo pehle Sri Lanka aayega, wo 2 din Sri Lanka mein, Colombo mein ruk jayega, do a little bit of tourism here because their tourism industry is great, do tourism here and then go to Mabalipuram, go to Chennai. So can do customs and immigration here only and then go there. So airport to airport you join, right? So you never know. The Middle East might turn around and say, that's great. Here's a country with whom we can do this. We can have this arrangement. So more people think of this Vasudeva Kutumbakam that we talk about, where you have these kind of arrangements.
What does it translate to? One world.
Yeah, one world. Okay. Basically means that while we talk about, that make in India, we should be self-reliant and all, we also look at the world that it's one world. So when you do something good in your country, you share it with others. You make vaccines, give it to countries which can't cope with the COVID situation in their country. You don't turn around and say, hey, we haven't yet given COVID to all our people, so no, let's hold it. We're not going to give it to the others. No, we have that hydrochloroquine or whatever that was. We gave it to countries which needed it. We needed medicines. So there was all that vaccine Maitri was just about that you look at the world, look at education. You have to think beyond, and we do not look at it as brain drain. I've seen some of the thing that you have done, podcasts that you have done. There is a maturity which is coming in our country now. We're not looking at people who went out of the country as a brain drain. We're looking at them now investing back in our country. Right? There was a time, Ranveer, when people went, like super specialists who went, they studied in medical colleges, they had to give a bond. They had to pay 1 lakh rupees to the government because they studied in a government medical college, and then they 1 lakh or 2 lakhs, I don't remember exact amount, pay back to the government because they studied in a government and they had subsidized education and they were going to America. They had to get a permit. For super specialists, had to get a permit, like a surgeon leaving the country and going, had to get a permit to go out. Today, we don't see all that, right? We see this that, okay, you're going there. You're an Ajay Banga. You're going there. Tum MasterCard ko head kar rahe ho. MasterCard is going to invest here. We're going to have, there's a give and take that happens. So there's a larger worldview and we are more confident. Your generation is going to get ultra more confident about it. Yeah. Don't shy away from what we are.
Yeah. You mentioned that like there's a large section of India that actually wants to be united and then think economically about taking things forward. How large do you truly think that section is in percentage, roughly? I know, at least I know, I used to believe that my entire generation is like that. But the truth is, when you travel in the interiors of the country, they are overwritten with religious fervor. That is the truth. And that's an outcome of political marketing.
Could be, yes.
Like that you're thinking that your religion is superior to other religions.
Yeah.
It's not truly Vasudev Kutumbakam then.
That's also part of it. Supremacy of your religion by crushing another religion is wrong if you have that in. You don't want to crush another religion. But confidence in your own skin. I'm not saying that religious people are right and atheists are wrong or agnostics are right or whatever. It's your personal choice. But if it impinges on other citizens from practicing their religion, 100% wrong.
What have you learned about religion over the course of your journalism career?
Religion, very divisive in some respects. Practicing certain religious customs and traditions I used to keep a Karwa Chauth vrat, for example. I used to fast. And I know of journalists who would say, you? My God, how horrible. Why would you do something as backward as that? I wanted to do it. Does it matter? Like, in what way? I'm not, in no way am I subjugated by my spouse. Anybody who meets me knows that I'm not a victim out here. I just wanted to do it because there were others who were doing it and it was fun. And it was an endurance test in a way. No big deal. And I just didn't. But the more I got told by, these people that some of my colleagues who like, chi, I was like, ab to main karungi zarur. Like, so it wasn't religion so much, but it was being told that something is not politically right, which got on my nerves. I'd gone to cover election of, nomination process of a candidate, and she went inside. I might as well tell you this, who it was. It was Smriti Irani, and it was the 2014 election, and she was going to do it, and she went inside a temple before going and filing a nomination. We were a bunch of journalists who were covering, right? So she stopped at a village, she stopped here. You're covering everything. Then she went inside a mandir. So there the division occurred.
In terms of some of the journalists
went inside, and some of the journalists said, we will not step inside a temple. I was shocked beyond belief. And it didn't matter whether you're a Hindu or a whatever. Your work tells you to go there. You don't have to matha teko. You don't have to be religious in going inside. That's your work. How are you going to tell your channel that you didn't cover that? Fine, camera nahi leke gaye because you're not allowed to take a camera inside that temple. But you missed a story because of your mindset that you will not enter a temple.
Because of your conditioning.
That mandir ke andar nahi jaungi. So, no. I've seen a prime minister go and perform a ritual and one or two officers of his who refused to do that. Today, the same officers are all over the place because nobody thought that, the prime minister would become prime minister for so long. But I'm just saying that that there is so much of division in their mind in some people that they are not able to understand कि काम क्या चीज होती है, religion क्या होता है. So I just feel don't take it so seriously.
Yeah. I think one of the most mind-shattering things I've read in my life is the chapter that Yuval Noah Harari wrote about religion in Sapiens or 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. These are two of my favorite books. He's one of my favorite authors of all time. And he spoke about how religion in its truest sense is something that reoccurs along the human timeline. In terms of lots of religions have come and gone that we don't even know about. And religion always is one, a technique to find your own spirituality, but two, a technique used by powerful people to control mobs. That was such a true kind of essence of what religion is. Parallelly, I saw a clip of him yesterday on Instagram where he said that every single religion in the world is built based on stories, because stories are the easiest way to transfer philosophy to the general masses. But the issue is that every single religious person believes that only their stories are true and all the other ones are false.
Yeah, I guess, yes.
Which is the flaw of religion. I hope and pray that, New India understands these nuances of how culture works.
I don't think so. I think time nahi hai kisi ke paas. I don't think anybody dwells so much into it. Nobody has the luxury of, nobody in the sense of majority. It's dhanda. You have to go to work, you have to come back, you have to look after, you have to provide for parents, provide for children, provide for everybody, look after health issues, pay your EMI. Everybody's stuck in all this. So this deep things is only somebody who has prosperity and has the time to dwell into this. And that's a very small section in our country. If you see the numbers, I think there's a small section. There is, of course, a need for that too. As far as the quest for spirituality, religion, misusing, it's something which has happened for generations, ever since man evolved, ever since religions came into being, of misuse of religion for whatever, political purposes or manipulating your family also, for that matter. That also happens, So I don't get too much into it. I don't think I have the mental space right now to give for understanding that.
From a macro bird's eye view, do you think religious unity is increasing or decreasing going forward in India?
Good question. I don't know whether it's increasing or decreasing. I think tolerance in any form is decreasing.
Still?
Yeah.
I thought we've reached rock bottom. And
no, I don't think we are tolerant. We're intolerant about most things. And at the same time, I saw a video today, of Mumbaikars waiting in the rain for an auto. And that line went on and on and on, and people just standing in line. And then somebody, so I just said that, this is look at the tolerance level, no? That we are not in this day and age that you can still have 100 people in front of you. You're just waiting for an auto to get home after a hard day's work, or the state of this city's train network of people, the drudgery of getting back to work, the commuting, the humiliation that one has to face hanging out of trains. You don't need that in Delhi anymore. Calcutta has a metro that functions. Mumbaikars, a house, a roof over your head, this is your commercial capital of the country. We should be able to provide that. So here is where I feel that there is so much tolerance. People just accept it. That fatalistic naseeb. That it takes a generation for a person to get a 1 BHK house in this country is the most awful thing. If we have Indra Awas Yojana where the poor people are getting housing, where not Indra, it is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana now, where the poor are getting, there are lakhs of houses which is coming. It needs to be done for urban housing too. We need that housing issue to be sorted out. We need that dignity to be given to our middle class or to our citizens, that they can come to work and go back home without the humiliation of hanging out of trains and hanging out of buses. That just needs to be done. It just bothers me about these things that need to be done. Faltu ki issues mein we are fighting and we have, my religion greater than your religion. Why you worshipping on the road? You should worship at home. Why is the mandir ki ghanti louder than the azan ka awaz?
Yeah, go make money instead,
Go make money. Yeah.
Like, times are ripe to make money.
Make money, spread that wealth, employ people. By employing people, you're spreading wealth.
Often when you have a lack of ambition, that lack of ambition is substituted with religious fervor. Or with some kind of fervor, which in many cases is religious.
Getting out of the space, out of your comfort space, that naukri ki jo aadat hai, basically, I met with several podcasters just a week ago, and many of them were saying like, we did an engineering degree, we got out, and we weren't getting jobs, so we started podcasting. It was something that घर में बैठे बैठे क्या करोगे, तो लगा दिया. You met some like physics wala, didn't like the engineering that he was doing, so dropped out and started teaching physics from his room and see where he's reached. So I'm not saying everybody can be an entrepreneur, agreed. But if you have that spare time now, do something which will be productive, economically productive or socially productive in some manner, rather than getting into these religious fights about which religion. Some I understand who say that the loudest voice is heard the most, and sometimes people use that religion platform just because they are louder, they are more vociferous, so we'll get subjugated. I understand where that thought comes from, but I just feel किसी और को करने दो. You're intelligent. Use it for some other purpose.
Yeah, I also feel all these forms of an increase of religious fervor as well as religious animosity are political marketing from both sides. So I just hope that the end consumer, which is the average Indian voter, understands these nuances. Hopefully through podcasts.
Hopefully. Yes.
Smita Prakash.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's it.
It's been such a wonderful experience talking to you. I've got to understand so much more by listening to podcasts of yours. And I just loved this interaction. So all the best to you.
No, thank you so much. Genuinely honored that someone with your mind is also...
I'm flattered that you would think that.
When we were outside, we took a break in the middle of this shoot. Shrutesh asked me how it is for me as the host. I said extremely dense. And that's what I feel every time I listen to your podcast as well.
Okay.
Which brings me to the start, which makes me want to say that I feel journalists have a very, very, very crucial role to play in the digital ecosystem in this country going forward, considering all these things we've spoken about. Like, you guys are the actual thought leaders with the right kind of research, the right mindset, the right training. But it needed that one person to start, and you're that person.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I've held back from saying this throughout this chat, but you do know that you're at the forefront of Indian journalism in a lot of young people's eyes, right?
No, I didn't know that. And I don't know if that's true, Ranveer. I think you're just being kind.
No, I'm not. See, if I want to be kind, I would be kind at the start of the podcast and make you feel comfortable. But
okay.
I'm genuinely saying this because you're my inlet into information. You, Palki Sharma. And unfortunately, that's it.
Okay.
Like, my other formats of input come from Twitter, come from journalists on Twitter. But in terms of what I consume, it's just you two. And it's because you guys have strong, high quality digital presence. That's important. This is where the audience is.
Okay.
So you are leading the pack.
So we just jumped into this. Palki's also started on the digital format, and she's very excited about it too. So she's much younger than I am. When I did it, I was like really nervous, but that's the way to learn, right? To get out of your comfort zone, and like which we discussed early, that get out of your comfort zone, learn something new.
Yeah, you're absolutely killing it. So
thank you.
I'm just looking forward to seeing everything else you do.
Thank you.
In this new age format of podcasting.
Thank you so much, and all the best to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Sometimes after a podcast is complete, I'm left feeling like I didn't do justice with the guest, even if we've spoken for 2-3 hours. This is primarily because of the depth of Smita Prakash's mind. I felt like I wasn't able to ask her everything I wanted to ask her, but you know what? There's always a next time. We'll focus a lot more on the geopolitics aspects the next time she's around. But please tell me what you thought of this particular episode. I want your feedback. I want to know how we can make these in-depth conversations even more in-depth, even better for you, the listener. And I hope you've been liking this new style of TRS that we've begun lately. It's slightly news-oriented, slightly political, and a lot deeper than it ever was before. Make sure you follow our Hindi podcast as well. It's going along the same tangent. But until next time, guys, please go follow the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. I've linked it down below. And go follow TRS everywhere, baby. We're going to be back soon. Booyakasha.